Okay, well, I think this is the third time I've interviewed you, once for the podcast, once for a virtual summit, and today. And but we've done a bunch of webinars together. So Corey and I have known each other. I was working this out for about 7 years now. And that was Corey reached out to me to get onto the podcast, if I remember correctly, which is a great sort of meta learning, nothing to do with today, but just generally. Well, I suppose it is kind of connected to today. Reaching out to people can have a it's a great way of networking, obviously, and building that reach and getting that influencer status, which is kind of what we're talking about today. And we're going to cover a lot of ground here. So I'm just going to give you a couple of highlights from Corey's bio, and then we'll start covering some questions. And so the kind of stuff, before I get into Corey's bio, just quickly, the kind of stuff we're going to be looking at today is things like, how do you get a publishing deal? Should you self-publish? Should you go with a major publishing house? So how do you get the publishing deal in the first place? How do you get to write for a national magazine like Forbes or something like that? How do you get a branded talk like a TED talk or a TEDx talk? How do you get onto a top podcast? Those kind of things, the things that turn you into an influence and get your name out there and help you to build your personal brand, bring in not just clients, but the exact right clients for you, all of that good stuff. So those are some of the topics we're going to cover today. A little bit about Corey. I'll probably miss some things out, Corey, because I'm doing this from memory. And the great thing about introducing Corey is if I miss a few things out, there's tons there anyway. So it's all good. So Corey's a multiple TEDx speaker. More importantly, perhaps, he's helped a lot of other people get onto and do TED Talks as well. He's a multiple best-selling author of his own books and books he's collaborated with other people on, and I don't know what the numbers are, but I know they're in the multiple tens of thousands of book sales, I think. And Corey's interviewed, I think, over 6,500 people now. It's like people like Kevin Harrington, I'm sure you heard of, Les Brown, JJ Virgin, Bob Proctor, Mark Victor Hansen, tons of people you will have heard of. So lots of exciting things that Corey's done. He's also the founder of Blue Talks, which is another, obviously, talk-based program for people. Those are just a few little highlights there. So, Corey, welcome to this training. Thank you for coming on and speaking to us.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend. I am super excited to be here, and you were accurate, I think, in everything you said. You mentioned about the timeline. I believe it has been around 7 years. And, I've been podcasting 10, so it feels like it has to be close to 7 because I was early in on my podcasting journey. But yeah, thank you so much for having me here, John. And this is what I love doing. This is my absolute passion. Ultimately, my goal, and you could probably hear it in a lot of that bio, is to help people become influencers today rather than tomorrow. I'm just really trying to give people a voice.
So fast tracking that process.
Absolutely.
Which, and there's a bunch of stuff that I know today, which I really, really wish I'd known 8-9 years ago when I first started on this journey. It would have made things so much faster. But let's start with a kind of that high level overview question, which is why become an influencer in the first place? What's maybe just a few words about the impact that can have on you personally, your business, your finances, that kind of stuff. Why should we be worrying about this at all? That's the first question.
So I see basically two, I'm going to say answers to this. So on one hand, there's the answer of why should you become an influencer in terms of what it can do for other people? And then there's why should you become an influencer in terms of what it can do for you? And the first part I should tackle is the idea of the word influencer. Because when I started, John, and probably yourself, we didn't even use those terms. We would just say Les Brown's a great speaker. Jack Canfield's a great coach. Somebody else is a great author. And we would just use those terms. And so when I look at it today, it's so much different. So to me, what an influencer is, maybe I should define it first, is somebody who is trying to not only push people to the top of the mountain, as Zig Ziglar used to say, but also pull them up. So they're trying to bring them up to the top of the mountain with them. They're not just trying to get up there themselves. And the other side to that is I don't believe and think an influencer has to be 1-2 millions. Like, in other words, we hear the word influencer and we think John C. Maxwell, Tony Robbins, Marianne Williamson. Like, we think people that are impacting millions of lives. But here's an example, John. If you think about, for example, PC Merrill. So you're familiar with Zig Ziglar, of course. PC Merrill was Zig Ziglar's mentor, if you will. So basically, PC Merrill, Zig worked with him, and Zig credits him for helping him become the person he is today. Or, he passed away a couple of years ago, but becoming the person that he was. And so he credits him and says, he was my mentor. He helped launch everything. And so here's the interesting part. Ziegler impacted what, let's say 100 million lives. PC Merrill, 99% of the world wouldn't know the name. But here's the wild part. PC Merrill only had to impact one person to impact millions indirectly, Ziegler. And so why I bring this up is because when we think influencer, we think you have to be out there on the big stage impacting millions. But I just want to finish that part first and say, to me, you can be an influencer even if you're doing one-on-one coaching and you have 5 clients a week. So I'm trying to help you get your message out, even if you only want to reach a small number of people. Now, the secondary part to your question, because I wanted to set the pretense for what to me an influencer is. Yeah. The secondary part, though, is why would you want to do it for you? For you, it can mean you can sustain what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to impact lives, there's this great quote, and I'm going to mess it up a bit, but the quote is, you can't shine the light for others if you can't keep your own lights on. And so one of the things we struggle with is there's a lot of people that struggle with, I want to give everything away for free, or I want to help everybody. And I just, whatever that does for me doesn't matter. But the problem with that is, again, if you're stressed about how am I going to put food on the table, it's hard to also impact others at the same time. So first of all, an influencer will allow you to increase your revenue so that you can sustain yourself more and not only just give back personally, but that allows you financially to give back too. So that's one thing. In getting to an influencer status will allow you to grow, again, your business or your revenue. The secondary part is that it builds your expert status so that people that you are working with trust you more. So now all of a sudden, if you're coaching somebody, you go deeper with them because they trust you more, because they're like, well, my coach has written the book on it. My coach was on the TV show, and we just trust that more. So being an influencer allows you to do that. It also allows you to reach more people if that's your goal too. So on one hand, if you're wanting to impact, even if you were, I hope nobody's selfish when they're doing it, but even if you look from a selfish perspective, the influencer is going to do for you all the things you're trying to do anyway and sustain you while you're doing it. When you look at why you'd want to be an influencer to help other people, it's because, again, you can go deeper with them. They'll trust you more because you've been vetted in their eyes, and you'll be able to reach more people if that's your goal as well, because being an influencer, whether it's small or large, in most people's eyes, they want to share what you're doing because they feel you are impacting lives in a positive way. So to me, it's kind of a no-brainer all the way around. Being an influencer or an expert, we want to use that term, essentially helps you impact more people, change more lives, transform more lives, and transform your life at the same time.
Great answer. Yeah, you covered a lot there, and it's really good. I think something I wanted to kind of touch on is, I'm sure you have this as well, people who are just starting out, who are kind of anxious about, maybe they have imposter syndrome is a common one. They're anxious about going in front of the camera, or maybe they feel like they don't have enough, or they're not an expert enough, they don't know enough, or they haven't helped enough people. Or maybe they think, oh, well, I'm only reaching 1 or 2 people, and you kind of touched on this. So is it even worth it? To which one of the things I would say to that is, most people start out with just a handful. Tony Robbins tells this great story, and I've heard him tell it probably a dozen times, about how he booked out, I don't know, let's say it was a Holiday Inn somewhere, 500 seat room, and then he got 7 people turn up, and you think, can you imagine doing a 7-person meeting with Tony Robbins? Now you'd have to pay, $250,000 to attend, probably.
Absolutely.
So, Tony Robbins started out with 7 people. You and I, we can, or anybody that we're working with, if you're watching this and you're just starting out, I guess that's that I'm speaking to, because I know a lot of people, again, jump in here if this kind of chimes with your experience, Corey, but I work with a lot of people who are sort of kind of starting out. I see a lot of people kind of fall by the wayside at the kind of almost the first hurdle because of these issues, that imposter syndrome, that not having enough people, thinking, well, it's not worth it. To those people, or anybody that's having those kind of doubts, I would say just stick with it. You only need to help a few people. If you can help 1 or 2 people, you can help 10 people, you can help 20 people, you can build it up to 100 and so on. And gradually expand that. And the more you do it, the better you will get, the more confident you will get, the more you will get known, the more you will get invited, and all the good things happen from that. So I just wanted to touch on that. It kind of tie that in with what you're saying about what an influencer is, both in terms of helping yourself and helping other people.
Yeah, and to touch onto that as well, John, when you mentioned about Tony Robbins and that story, you may or may not have heard as well. I remember Harv Eker shares a story as well about when he first started. He his first event, he did a whole bunch of work to promote the event. And if I have the story correct, because it's been a while, but I believe what it was, he did all this work to promote this big event. And then the numbers of registrations were so low, he moved the event over to his house in his living room. And I think he had four people, and like 2 people were family members. And he ultimately, here's kind of it's always great when you have closure to a story like that. The end result is Harv Eker ended up selling his company, Peak Potentials, as one of the largest training companies in the world, X amount of years later. So again, to your point, it's not where you start, it's what you do with it and where you end that is the really what's the matter. So to your point, and I think that's why I defined influencers doesn't have to be somebody that's impacting 1 million people today.
Yeah. So just remember, whether it's people getting views or listens to your podcast or your videos or selling how many books, it's iterating. You start with a small number, like Harv's story. I remember Harv's story, and he's like bringing people in to pad out the numbers to make it look like there was more people who bought tickets and that kind of stuff. Most people that are really successful start really tiny. So let's move on. What I wanted to ask you about next was a kind of a high level again, and we can then drill down later if we have time, into some of the different key ways that you can become an influencer, for want of a better expression. So things like, maybe just a few words on things like books, talks, branded talks, particularly getting onto podcasts, getting articles in, Forbes or whatever journal or magazine it might be, things like that. Just can you give us a high level overview of some of those options that people have and why they might choose one or the other?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And so the first one that jumped into my mind, John, and maybe it's because it's the most popular, and I'll tell you how popular this is in a second, but it's the TEDx Talks. And so when people ask me, what moved the needle the most in your business? Every day of the week, if I'm being full disclosure and honest about it, the TEDx was the biggest needle mover. Second is more recent, and it might have been the biggest.
That's good, because that was one of my questions for later.
Yeah, okay, well, make sure to circle back on it. And I was just going to say that most recently this year, I now became a co-author of a Wall Street Journal USA Today bestseller, and I've seen a really big jump there. And I think that would have been a big needle mover, even bigger back then before I had a lot of the other stuff. But back then, I didn't have a lot of the other stuff, and the TEDx did a lot for me, in the sense that it actually got me taken seriously by Forbes. They told me that. My book deal, my newest one, as you know, it's with Morgan James Publishing. That, as far as them bringing me on as an author, they openly told me that your TEDx speaker made the difference. I interviewed a person named Ami James, who was on the TV show Miami Inc. And when I got to the interview, and he doesn't do podcast interviews. He did mine, and when I got there, he said, "Dude, by the way, I watched and love your TEDx talk." So I think he actually said yes because of the talk. So first of all, when we say what moves the needle, for sure, I can't deny the fact that the TEDx is a big needle mover. And when I said as far as how popular it is, it's so popular that, John, I wasn't intending to open our program this year, our branded talk program. I had not interest, but I had no plans. And I've been getting asked like 5 times a week, 4 times a week. When are you opening up that program again? I want to learn a TEDx talk. Somebody told me I need to speak to you. So it honestly is a big needle mover. That's one.
Yeah, and that's the premium program, isn't it? The people, so people coming in 5 times a week they're cold calling you to ask if they can get onto your program.
Premium program. Yeah. And so it's a weird scenario. It's fascinating.
That definitely falls into the category of first world problems.
Yes, exactly. And like I said, I'm planning to actually open it probably in July or August, but I wasn't planning to in all of 2021. I mean, I won't go further down that rabbit hole because I want to keep teaching, but I'll just say that, I didn't expect that. So that's one is the branded talks. And TEDx is the premium one. As you know, we do Blue Talks, which is just a newer fledgling one, but that's becoming really popular too. But so that's the branded talk area. So that's one. Why you'd want to do it is because you can leverage those talks in so many ways. You can, if somebody's thinking of hiring you as a speaker, that becomes your sizzle reel. I'll tell people listening here, John, and those listening in the replay, that my closing ratio, because we tested it, when I had my sizzle reel, my newest sizzle reel that I did was about $5,000. it was closing at around 70%, meaning out of 10 meeting planners that watched it, 7 would hire me from it. The TEDx is 8.5, so it's 85%. It's actually higher, and I didn't spend any money on it. And I asked people, I wanted to find out why, and they said, because your sizzle reels edited. So we know you're only picking the highlights. The TEDx is 5 or 18 or 12 minutes, and we know what you delivered there is what you're going to deliver for us. So that was one thing. And the second thing they said, in those nice red letters behind you, gave you extra credibility. So, so the TEDx is huge. The second one is the book. So you asked about books. And of course, we can dive into why you would pick which one of these for you. I mean, obviously, it goes without saying, if you're never going to speak on a stage and you don't care and you have that fear and you're never going to overcome it, then the TEDx is probably not going to be the one option you pick. So first of all, you got to decide what is the format you like the most. It's like why, you wouldn't pick video if audio is your favorite thing. Like you wouldn't say, I'm going to go launch a YouTube channel, but I hate being on video and I don't want to overcome that fear. You would probably go, okay, well, if I like audio more, I'll launch a podcast. So one of these things is going to come back to which one do you like the most. But the second one you mentioned about was books. And so books for me, what they do outside of the obvious of you're an expert if you wrote the book on it. If you're going to hire a dentist, one wrote a book and the other one didn't. Most people, all things being equal, will pick the one that wrote the book on it. So there's the credibility, just like the TEDx, that comes with writing the book. But there's one other aspect of the writing the book that is so powerful, which is it becomes one of the best business cards you'll ever pay to have. And so I heard Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, say one time, and this is the guy who sold the book, had sold 26 million copies at that point. You wouldn't think many people would call it a business card when you sold 26 million copies, but he said it was the best business card he ever invested in because of what the doors had opened. Like if he went to an investors meeting, he handed them the book and all of a sudden he's looked at differently than all the other people in that meeting. And so the book becomes a great business card. It's a great handout, even if you're not selling a lot of copies. But then the other side, as you know, with this, John, the book also can be leveraged to grow your email list. Something I know you shared, and I got it from you, and I got it from Chandler Bolt, and I've told you that many times, I think. But let me just show people here, since I have the book in front of me. But one of the things I did early in the book was read this first, and basically give people an audio version of the book for free if they jumped onto the website, thebookofwhyaudio.com. So they jump on that website, they say, hey, I want to get a copy of the audio, and now I have a way to know who it was. Now, that might not seem as significant if you're self-published, but if you're with a publisher, they don't give you those names. Amazon doesn't give you those names. You have no way to track that. So in this book, whether they get the print or they go and look inside on Amazon the first few pages, they might now sign up on my newsletter, and I know who they are and can connect with them going forward. So a book can be leveraged to build your list. It can be, again, a great business card that opens doors. It can be a gift you give to people. So books, that's why I would say books, is because it does those things. And again, it still gives you that expert credibility status. So, I mean, I guess I'm diving into how I would use them at the same time. But so book and TEDx, I would say if I was starting from scratch, as you said, somebody newer, I would probably go the book route first because I think it's easier than landing the TEDx and delivering the TEDx. And not only that, if you say I want to deliver a TEDx, a lot of people think I want to deliver a TEDx and I want to start sharing the video next month. Well, you're already a year too late because it takes probably 9 months from the time you apply to, if you're lucky enough to land it, to delivering the talk and the video coming in. Whereas a book, if it's self-published, as you know, John, it could be out in a week. And so I would say if you're trying to get something quick to market and you want quicker credibility, then the book is going to be a better answer. And then, of course, on the other side is that you can absolutely leverage the book in many ways. So to me, book is if you want something quick, you want to be able to get something out and start growing your brand right away. And as you know, you can build a back-end business off a book that's a 7-figure business. So books I love, obviously that's right up your alley. And I think the other one you asked about was podcasting. And podcasting, my thoughts on that are, if you're going to get into podcasting, make sure you can commit the time to podcasting, because what happens, and
sorry to interrupt you there.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
There's two ways. One is to launch your own podcast, which is obviously takes some time and effort, and there's a learning curve there. And the other one is to guest on other people's.
Yes.
You can do both, obviously, but
100%.
Two directions.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because I want to mention that in the sense that if, like, so a lot of people say to me now, should I start a podcast? And I always ask why. The most common answer is because I heard it's like right now everybody's going into podcasting, so I can build a business really quick out of it. And to me, honestly, John, I'm 10 years in my first podcast, and I would say that's the wrong direction to go with podcasting. What I mean by that, and you've seen this being in podcasting, it's a long game. I mean, you're still getting leads. I mean, I know you've talked about people that reached out to you from your podcast that you haven't done in how long? So podcasting is evergreen. And so even if you decide to leave it, as long as you stay in it for a while, you're going to receive and see results. But they say the burn rate, meaning the quit rate of podcasting, is 9 weeks. So the average person that starts a podcast drops the podcast in 9 weeks. And so if you think about that, why is that happening? It's because people think it's going to be easier than it is to host a podcast. And they think it's going to they're going to get way more listeners at first than they do. And then they go, well, this is a lot of work for a little bit of reward. And so what I would say on podcasting, again, if you're going to host it, there's so many benefits. I could list for 20 minutes, all the benefits of being a host, but just know it's going to take time. The secondary side, as you said, is guesting on shows. So now you're wanting to be interviewed on shows. For those that don't have the time to host their own, I think this is a much better alternative. And basically this is now I go on John's show and he's basically giving me his credibility and saying, you can trust Corey. And now I'm in front of your audience.
They're on fire twice now, haven't you?
What's that? Sorry?
Were you talking about JLD there? Or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been on Entrepreneurs on Fire twice. And I will say, more than any other show I've been on, it's the show that this much time later, I think the last time I was on was like 5 years ago, I'm still getting people reaching out saying, hey, I heard you on Entrepreneurs on Fire. And you think about that, a show that I did the first interview probably 7 years ago. Second one 5 years ago, and I'm still getting reach outs from that. And that's the power of podcasting. So again, I know, John, I dive deeper into each of them, but I'm thinking you mentioned a newer person. They might not know how all of these work, but in terms of which one you should do, since I've now summarized those three core ones, I would say, again, it comes back to what your goals are. So what are your goals? If your goals are to start working with and getting big name endorsements from big influencers, then I would say podcasting is one of the better of the three directions to go, because it's the one where you can reach out to them. You have an excuse to reach out. And so I would say if you want to build
networking. Yeah,
for networking, building collaborations, any of those things, podcasting to me is the best one. Because if you want somebody to write an endorsement for your book and they don't know you and you send the book, I mean, that's a lot harder of a sell than saying, I want to bring you on my podcast and share you with everybody I know. Like, that's an easier sell for building a relationship. But if you're trying to build credibility instantly, quickly, I think a book is the best answer. I mean, you can do a Kindle, and John, you can talk to this even more than me, but I know people that have had their book out a week from when they said, I'm going to put a book out. I mean, that's pretty quick, but you can have it out really quick. Yeah. The other two things we're talking about, you can't do that quick.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And it sounds from what you've said so far, and I was going to just touch on getting articles as well, but it sounds very much like getting the book out perhaps first is an easy way to kind of flow into the other things. So you're much more likely to get your TEDx talk or some other branded talk if you've got a book, which we know that anyway. We that's always been the case. But you've talked about that as well. Again, getting people to guest on your podcast, if nobody's heard of you before, is going to be easier if you're the expert and you've got the book. Equally, getting onto somebody else's show. And I'm guessing with the articles as well, because I think you've written for Forbes and others, Entrepreneur, maybe you'd correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing the fact that you've got, in your case, multiple books opens that door much more easily. Is that fair? Is that kind of how you think it works?
Yeah. So the answer is yes. That's how it works, in my opinion. And I write now. I wrote for Forbes and Entrepreneur for quite a while, but they wanted a really, really big commitment. And it sounds crazy to say that I wasn't prepared to make the commitment, but it was like an article every 2 weeks. And I just realized I was going to drop the ball too many times. And then I would burn a bridge rather than me keep doing it. But yes, I've written for Forbes and Entrepreneur many times in the past. And then I write now for Thrive Global, Medium, a lot of the other ones, Modern Magazine. And so when it comes to writing magazine articles, obviously, first and foremost, being a good writer is what's going to get you there more than anything. But they're going to look at your background. They're going to say, well, and they're also looking, how can we market this person? So when they say, and they like SEO, so when they say multiple time TEDx speaker, that's going to increase their SEO. When they say Wall Street Journal, USA Today bestselling author, that's going to improve their SEO. So they know that they have a vested interest to say, well, let's listen a little bit closer to this guy's pitch. You still have to pitch. Yeah. You still have to go through the whole process typically, unless you know somebody that knows somebody, but you still have to go through those things, but that opens the doors. Also, when we talk about podcasting, for instance, I was on Forbes Books Radio because of my book. Only reason I was on there was because I had a book. Obviously, it's Forbes Books, but what I'm saying is that they reached out and they heard what happened was they saw that I did a Kickstarter campaign early on before people were to launch my book. Now, to be honest, John Lee Dumas did it before me, and I watched him do it. And so John and I, it's funny because I did my podcast about 3 months before he launched his. Not that he knew I launched mine, but I'm saying, and then he did his Freedom Journal launch through Kickstarter, and then I did my book launch. Mine was still different than his because his was more of a journal type thing, whereas mine was an actual book launch. But Forbes came to me and they said, we saw you did this launch and we don't know anybody who's really done this, like a book launch through crowdfunding. So they wanted to know how I did it and all the details. But that wouldn't have happened, to your point, without a book. But back to the article, because I know I jumped away from that. Yes, you got to be a good writer. By the way, if you want to write for the bigger ones, you're also going to have to sample articles. That's one of the first things they're going to ask is, show me another article you've written. So the other thing you want to do is start small. Don't jump right to Forbes or Entrepreneur. Have articles for Elephant Journal or Medium or some of these other ones where they basically, like Medium, you just can set up an account and submit, and they review it. I think they still do, but review it. But at the end of the day, you can submit it. So it's then just up to them if you need to make changes. But my point is, if you have articles on Medium and Thrive in that, and you approach Forbes and they say, send us some sample articles, now you can show them your writing. So you do have to be a good writer, but whenever in your bio you say, and I also wrote the book, the international best-selling book, insert name here, here's my link to my TEDx talk. Those things, like everything else, are going to open up more doors. So really our takeaway from that, John, is I call it the domino effect, activating the domino effect, is if you can figure out what is the big domino I need to push down, that'll knock over other dominoes, then what you do is you leverage each time you knock a domino down for another domino. So what I mean is you land the TEDx talk and then you leverage the TEDx talk to get something else. You get an interview with Jack Canfield and then you leverage that to get an interview with somebody else. So that's what my whole business has been about. It's been like a building block where I did one thing and then I recognized I need to use that thing to get the next thing. And then eventually when you have 4 or 5 or 10, it gets a lot easier to say, here's some of the stuff I've done. I've had Jack Canfield on our show and Dan Sullivan and Mark Victor Hansen. I know that we're partners with Jack, and I know that Dan's your coach. We'd love to have you on our show. Well, Mark goes, well, crap, Jack's been on there and Dan's been on there. I trust both them. Yeah, sure, I'll do the show. So yeah, I mean, each one of those 4 have their own benefits, but the key thing is which one fits best for you. When we're talking podcasting, the books, writing articles, or like a speaking engagements or TEDx or what have you, which one fits the most for you? But then recognizing each one of those dominoes you knock down will help you get to the next domino.
Yeah. And are there any big things that I've missed there? I know there's four big topics there, but any others that I should have picked up? I was going to ask about social media in a second, but any other things that?
Well, I mean, I'd like to give people a hack or something they can take away and start using tomorrow.
Hacks are good, yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to do that. And it relates to everything we're talking about in a small way. But when we talk about somebody that's listening right now that's saying, I need to up-level my influence, I need to up-level my credibility, I need to, whenever a client looks at me, they go, this is a person that I can trust, and or this is a person that's been there. And so here's something that people can do that nobody really does. And I say nobody, I'm generalizing. Tony Robbins is doing it. JJ Virgin, who we're interviewing later today on our show, does it. Bob Proctor does it. But a lot of people that are starting out don't do it. And so what I'm talking about here is creating a thing called the As Seen On banner. So John.
That's one of my later questions. So thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, absolutely. So the As Seen On banner is something, you might be wondering, what's he talking about, As Seen On banner? If you go to any website by a big name influencer, I'm going to say it's like 9 out of 10. I mean, you could test this right now and go to Jack Canfield's website. I'm sure it's there. Tony Robbins, I'm sure it's there. It's basically a spot on their website where it says as seen on or featured in, and insert names here, Ellen, Oprah, Forbes, Entrepreneur, TEDx, what have you. And so it's a banner. And some it's not a banner, it's just the logos, but it's basically something that shows you, here are some of the people that have featured them. But what it does psychologically is it gets you going, wow, they were on this show, they did that, and it gets you trusting that person quicker. So I found that it shortens your sales cycle to about half, because if you're thinking of hiring a coach, and for whatever reason it works psychologically with us, but you see that they were on Super Soul Sunday, it changes your view of them. And so what's interesting about that, John, is most people don't have an As Seen On banner that are in the expert or influencer space. It seems to be mostly the big names. So I tried to figure out why that is. And when I've asked people questions, they're like, well, I wasn't on Ellen. But where are the rules saying it has to be Ellen? You know, when I started out, I haven't been on Ellen yet, but I've been on a lot of big platforms. But when I started out, my first banner didn't say that. It had all these small platforms. What's great for people now is it's so much easier than it was when you and I started, because think about things like podcasting. So I'm going to give people a hack for what you can do to have an as seen on banner in less than a month and cost you $0.00. And not only that, it's going to help you get more podcasting and media interviews in the process. So so I'm going to say podcasting because it's easiest. If you go magazine articles, it's going to take you longer to do this. You know, if you go any of the other directions, it's going to take longer. So if you want a quick fix, if you will, there's a website called radioguestlist.com. Now, there's other websites like this, but radioguestlist.com is one of the websites. And on radioguestlist.com, what they do, and it's free, by the way, is you can go there, and I think it's on the right-hand side. You sign up for the newsletter for free. And then the very next day, starting the next day, and it won't stop until you tell it to stop, every day, you're going to get an email from radioguestlist.com. And it's going to have 4 or 5, maybe more, but 4 or 5 podcasters looking for you. Like they're looking for guests for their show. And so even if you're newer, these are people that are, some of them have paid an ad to try to find guests for their show. By the way, John, that's crazy to me considering how many people are pitching me in a week to be on my show. And yet people are still paying like $5 to put an ad out to find guests. So the point is, though, if they're looking for guests and they're willing to post an ad and even just type the ad, even if they're not paying, and put it together, that means they're willing to take a newer person onto their show. So let's say you get 5 of those a day, just for easy numbers, and you for 2 business weeks. So 5 days, business days a week, 2 business weeks. So 10 days, you apply for all 5 every day. My bet is by the end of those 10 days, you're going to have at least 10 interviews. So at least 1 in 5 you'll land. And then because they're podcasters, as you know, John, mostly pre-record their interviews. So you can probably get all those interviews done in the next week to 2 weeks after that. So now you've got the interviews, you've been on the shows, you asked them for the logos, and now here we are 3.5 weeks, let's say, into the whole thing. You now have enough logos for your as seen on banner. Now, there's only one cost you may absorb, and that's up to you. If you can't design a banner, if you don't like doing that like me, then you might go to like somebody at Upwork or 99 Designs or Fiverr and pay them $20 or $25 to design your as seen on banner. So what I'm suggesting is it can be free, but if you want your banner to look a little better, if you're not a design person, I'm talking now $20, $25. And in everything I've seen, you'll close more business. Whatever the numbers you're closing now, your number will increase. And again, it's cost you basically, even if you look at the time to pitch the podcast, maybe a half hour each day doing that. Then on the shows, most of the shows will be a half hour. So now we're talking what? Let's say a half hour a day. So we're talking like 2.5 hours a week. So we're talking 10 hours of your time to close more business and to be more credible. And that, by the way, you keep that banner forever. And now if you get on a bigger show, just so people know, what you do is you switch out the smaller logo and you put in the bigger show's logo. I will add this one last part about that. There's over 1.5 million podcasts now in the world. And so the good news for you is what that means is that most podcasters, we don't know their listenership. So we look at all the podcast logos the same unless we know it's a big show. And that means you could be on the smallest shows with 1 listener each and your logo still carry as much weight. So that's one very tangible strategy everybody could do leaving here now. And by the way, I didn't add, because you're on radio guest list, that means you get interviews. So even outside of the banner, this is also a way, by going on that website for free, you can start masking your interviews and actually getting some audio clips that you can use all over the place. So I want to share that, John.
Yeah, that's a great hack. That's a really good hack. And it's I like it because it's easy, actionable, quick to get started. Going back to what you were saying at the beginning of our talk, is those podcasts, they're evergreen. You know, people, even if the viewership or listenership is relatively small, A, you never know if it'll get bigger, if that podcast will take off, and B, that's going to be there. Not just the logo, but your interview is there. And the other nice thing about doing guesting on the podcast is, you have zero post-production. Somebody, you're reaching a brand new audience, somebody else's audience, and you don't have to edit the podcast, you don't have to upload it and do all the things that you and I have had to do as podcasters. So it's a very quick and easy way of doing it. You do the 20-30 minute interview, and then it's, your job is done. So that's quite nice. You can just hand it all over to somebody else. It's like
Can I share? I want to share. Yeah, absolutely. It's easy labor. Well, I want to share something too, John, and I'll tell you in real time. I know a few people have just joined us recently. I probably have an extra 15 minutes longer than I planned because I looked at my calendar, and so we can go an extra 15 minutes more than I planned.
Okay. So how much time does that give us from now if you add the
25 minutes on?
25 okay, minutes. Excellent. Cool.
So I wanted to say for people that may be wondering, like the guesting of podcasts, how beneficial can it be? I believe you know who Steve Olsher is. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Steve runs the New Media Summit, which is basically a podcasting platform, but it's a conference as well where people go and pitch podcasters. Now, I've been on their panel of podcasters. They call it Icons of Influence, but I've been on their panels of podcasters 5 out of the last 7 times. And people are paying, by the way, quite a bit of money to go and pitch podcasters to be on their show. But one of the things Steve teaches during his 3-day events, which is so powerful. I see somebody ask about Clubhouse too, and I will comment on that. But one of the things that Steve talks about that's so powerful is how he's built a 6-figure business by guesting on podcasts. Yeah. And so what he does, and I don't know if the numbers are as high as they were when he shared that. Oh, go ahead. You want to answer?
Because sorry, I know that Steve's going big on Clubhouse right now, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's why somebody asked about Clubhouse, but yeah, Steve is going big on Clubhouse.
Yeah, I think Rick asked about Clubhouse.
But what he does, just so people know how he does that, I mean, I'll give you the 2-second version of what, he does a 45-minute keynote on it. But essentially what he's doing is he's guesting on podcasts. He's having a compelling story, and he has a landing page, you know how this all works, John, set up where he's saying, hey, and if you want to learn more about that, and he gives away a PDF or something, go to my website here, grab this copy, and we'll make sure to send you out the free info. And so he's building his email list, and then he has it tied, so it's a funnel already. So then you sign up, and then it's immediately like, hey, do you want to check out this? And so he showed us through PayPal on the board all his transactions to show that it was over 6 figures, because he separates that account, which I love. I mean, most people would say that's bragging, but I love it because 99% of the world tells us this is how much money I made, and we don't know if it's true or not. He literally went through his whole PayPal to show us, but that's what he did. He basically guested on podcasts and sent them to a place where either he has an automatic funnel or they could reach out via email a couple of days later and say, hey, did you hear about our program? Whatever that program is. But that's what he's done. He's guested on podcasts, and I think he said he only goes on 2 podcasts a week. Like when he was doing that. I don't know if he still runs that funnel, but he was going twice a week, 2.5 hours. So an hour a week to add an extra 6 figures to your business is not bad. Yeah. But he has a very strategic approach. Like I want to say this because I'm not going to say that you're going to just literally go in the radio guest list I mentioned. And some of these shows are newer. They tell you their listenership, but I'm not going to say you're going to go on a show with 14 listeners and convert that to 400 leads when there's only 14 listeners. So it's got to be realistic. He's been doing this long enough that he's been getting on the Entrepreneurs on Fire show, the Jordan Harbinger shows. And these are shows with thousands of listeners.
Yeah, no, good point. But yeah, and you say only twice a week, but actually if you do that consistently, that's 100 a year. And again, back to these are evergreen. They're generating leads and bringing people into your universe, if you like, for as long as that person has an account with probably iTunes or whichever hosting, provider, Libsyn or whoever the hosting provider is. Okay, so you touched on Clubhouse. Rick asked about Clubhouse, and I was going to sort of ask a broader question as well about social media in general, and whether, to the extent to which you would advise or for or against somebody trying to sort of build their influencer platform just through social media, or do you run that concurrently with trying to get your talks and your book and that kind of stuff? Since we've got a little bit of extra time, maybe you could speak to the social media side of things and maybe touch on Clubhouse for Rick and anyone else who's interested.
Absolutely. And we have a question here as well. Please write out the SC for me. Did you catch that? I'm trying to think the SC, the acronym, was that?
Yeah. What's SC? Let us know.
Yeah, I want to make sure. I probably said something that has SC in the letters, and now I'm just trying to remember what it is. But I'll dive into this, and then I'll watch for that follow-up. So Rick, as far as Clubhouse, I just had this conversation yesterday and the day before. I was on Clubhouse last week talking about landing TEDx talks. So I believe in Clubhouse. I'm leaning in a bit. But, the banner line. So the, where are we at here?
radioguestlist.com.
Yeah, probably what it was. I think so. I'll put it in here while we're talking, and let me know if that's not what I'm thinking about. I could have been just when I said the as far as the as seen on banner. So maybe maybe I said that fast, as seen on banner. So put that in there. So having said that, as far as Clubhouse, one of the things that I believe, so I mean, it's a two-part answer because you asked about social media, and that obviously ties into Clubhouse. So the first part is, I don't think it's good to throw all your eggs in one basket. So let me say that first. And I just had this conversation yesterday. He said about, she's fearful all the time. And this is the person interviewing me. So she said she's fearful all the time about what happens if most of her clients, she said, are on Facebook. What happens if Facebook pulls her page down for some reason? Maybe not even her fault. What happens then? And to me, I liken that to, what if you're a fitness professional and you were selling your DVDs in Walmart, John, and let's say you're Tony Horton or Jillian Michaels, and you're crushing it, and you're the one that everybody goes to and sees your stuff in Walmart. But then Walmart says, we decided we like Chalene Johnson more. So Tony, we're going to just start getting rid of your DVDs. Or Jillian, we're going to start getting rid of your DVDs. What happens if Walmart was your only customer in the world? So you were the king or queen of the world, and now all of a sudden you have no customers, because Walmart doesn't collect the email addresses for you. They don't collect names for you. They don't say, here's who bought your stuff. So you have no business. You have no clients or nothing. You have to start from scratch again. And to me, that's what it's like with Facebook. If you did every single thing on Facebook only and nowhere else, and then you left Facebook or Facebook kicked you off, what do you have? Zero. You're starting again. Yeah. So first of all, I'm not an advocate for only being on one platform because of that. Secondly, I'm not an advocate for being only on social media because of that. But there's two things you can do there. One, you can be on a few different platforms and try to go deep on a few different platforms. So that way, if one of the three pulls the plug on you, you can try to bring the people over to those other two. That's one option. The other option, which I think is probably more beneficial long-term, is to be, and I wish I was doing this the day before I started doing business, which is building an email list. That's the other thing I would do, because you have a way to communicate. Like, for example, when I decided, John, I was going to at least check out Clubhouse, first thing I did was I sent an email out and say, hey guys, I'm on Clubhouse. And I went from 0 followers to 100 followers in a couple of days. Where else could you do that quickly? And so that's one. And then when I put videos out, YouTube videos, I mean, I have a good sized list, but as far as the amount of people that click and watch the video, if I only send it out once ever, it's in the hundreds, low hundreds. But again, when you're on YouTube and you can get in the low hundreds on every video you put out, that builds up quickly. So email lists allow you to do those things. And then if there's a new platform comes out and you want people to know about it, you can do it there. So first of all, I'm not big on only being on social media, because I think you need to have a backup plan in case. So that's one side. Secondly, as far as building your whole business on social media, can it be done? Yes, people are doing it every day. But for me personally, I like to have a bit of, I'm going to say diversity. Like I really do like speaking live and being in front of people, and that's coming back again finally. And I like that, but I always leverage every place I'm at. So if I go to an audience, I'll find a way, like I'll say, hey, I'd love to give everybody a free gift. And so if you want to go to this website and grab it. And so I love to build my email list while I'm speaking at an event. Some events, I bring my takeaway form if I can't do the other thing I just said. And at the end, I'll say, hey, I want to give my evaluation form so you can let me know any comments. And one of the questions there is, can we add you to our newsletter? So I'm always leveraging offline stuff to online and online stuff to offline. So my answer to your question in a short version is no, I don't believe in building it all on one or the other. But I also, if being fair to social media, that that does include the offline to online, meaning like it's hard to build a business in this day and age without any social media. And I do know some speakers who don't have a website. Maybe they have a LinkedIn profile at most, and are still making 7 figures speaking. But how long is that still going to last? The people I'm talking about have been doing it 20 years. I don't know many people that started up yesterday without that stuff and is growing at that level. So I think you need social media, but I don't think you should be on only social media. And then this gives me a segue to talk about Clubhouse, which is that one of the things I worry for people is when they come to me and say, Corey, you're missing out. Your business is going to go under because you're not on Clubhouse. And they're trying to encourage me to leave the other social platforms. And whether we like them or not, Facebook and LinkedIn, and I maybe even go say Twitter and Instagram, we're not sure, but I'm pretty sure. But those first 3 haven't went anywhere through all the years of people saying they're disappearing. So I think as long as you like one of those platforms, you probably should be on one of them, because I don't think they're going anywhere. The thing I concern myself with is how many times have we heard, John, Snapchat? Crap, it goes back to MySpace, but the Vine. How many times have we heard from people, oh my gosh, buddy, you're missing out and your business is going to go under because this is going to be the one that takes over everything. And now we're barely either talking about them, or like the Vine, we only talk about it as in the past tense. MySpace, even more so, just the past tense. So I worry when people go all in on a new platform and leave their other stuff. And I think that's happening with some people on Clubhouse because they think it's the new big great shiny object. Here's what I'll say. I think right now, if you're going to be in Clubhouse, now's the time to be in it. But look at it as it's working for now, not it's my whole game plan. And the reason I say that is I've been in rooms. I haven't decided to host a room yet because I don't have time really. But I've been in rooms. I watch a lot of my clients who tell me they don't have any time these days go into Clubhouse for 4 and 5 hour sessions. And I see the alerts on my phone. People who I know said, Corey, I don't even have another spare minute. And then they're in Clubhouse for 5 hours in a room. Like, that doesn't compute to me. But I'll just look at it from let's look at this from basically a point of view from a 50,000 looking down view. For Clubhouse, here's the numbers. April, 9 million people signed up for Clubhouse. May, less than 1 million people signed up for Clubhouse. So 900 some thousand. So let's look at that realistically. Would you invest in a stock that was going in that direction? And we can go hypothesize why that happened, meaning maybe the core people that were going to be in Clubhouse all got latched in 1 month. But still, most social media, when they're brand that new, it usually does this. And so it makes me, and I don't know the reason behind why that happened, but those are the numbers. Secondly, so I looked at that, and then I looked at somebody I knew on LinkedIn. Now, let's be fair, it's LinkedIn, not Clubhouse saying this, but somebody on LinkedIn I know who's a big influencer did a survey, and they had 100-some thousand people vote, and they had 20-some thousand comments. And their question was basically, how many people here like Clubhouse as much as they did a month ago? That was essentially the core of the question. And I read the comments, John, and it was almost all, I liked it at first, not a fan now. Most of the rooms have turned into sales pitches. I'm not getting the same thing I used to. I found I was wasting so much time, and on and on. So if I'm looking at it, if I was an investor and I'm looking at the numbers going down and I'm looking at those comments, that tells me I better not replace everything else with Clubhouse. At the same time, I can tell you a lot of people that have grown their Instagram 3 times as large in a month with Clubhouse. So I think it depends. If you look at it as, I would look at it as a funnel for now, but going back to my point, I wouldn't look at it as a funnel forever for sure. Is that a fair answer?
Okay. Yeah, no, there's some good insights, and I didn't know those numbers. That's the first time I heard those. So yeah, maybe it sustains long term, and getting in now is great, sets you up for long term. Maybe it doesn't sustain long term, but you get some benefits now, and you build your Instagram following, and so on. So I guess.
And have a call to action. Well, I say to have a call to action on Clubhouse. One of the things I know, like, you can't say here's my website or anything like that, but what you can say is if you want more insight about how to land a TEDx talk, DM me on Instagram. And I found that works well because you can, so it does generate leads, but again, I think it's like it just know what you're getting into. Like, don't go all in. Just like I wouldn't have went all in on Vine if I was already on YouTube crushing it. I wouldn't have switched over to Vine, because I do worry if it's brand new. But a lot of people did that. They went, oh, well, Vine is offering me sponsor money for if I do this or that. And then they just closed their YouTube account. And I'm like, what? You don't even know if Vine's going to stick around. And then I think the Vine gets sold. But again, I never hear about it from anybody anymore. I don't even know. The honest, John, so far out of that loop, I don't even know if you can still add the Vine app. I don't even know if there is an app. But it was like, it was going to take over the world when it first came out. And by the way, TikTok's like that now. And I think TikTok has more staying power than the Vine, but it's still, again, just be weary of building your stuff on social media or only.
And also, for sure. And also be aware of where your target audience is hanging out, because, some platforms are going to convert a lot better than others. So there's going to be some trial and error there to figure out what's right for you. But yeah, that's good. So maybe have one, or I mean, I tend to say to people, like, don't try and do everything at once. Especially, again, if you're just starting out, maybe pick 1 or 2 platforms and invest some time on those, building your following. Don't try and pick 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different platforms and do them all at once, because yes, there's ways of repurposing content, but if you're trying to do too many plates at the same time, spinning all the same time, it just becomes overwhelming, and the danger is that they all end up getting dropped. It's better to pick 1 or 2 and do them well, and you can always add more later on. Particularly if you get as you grow, you get a team and you can get some help and bring some people on board. So Corey, how are you doing for time? Because it's 36 minutes past the hour
I got
now.
probably about
So,
I got probably about 10 minutes.
okay.
And John, if it's okay, I'll give people one more little piece and one little nugget since we just before we jump away from social media, it just popped into my head to share this. But when we're talking as well, and I see in the comments there, know your target audience, like you said. So one thing I'll add is if your target audience, so I'm going to put the if on here, if your target audience is on LinkedIn, you should be on LinkedIn. And I don't mean just like you should have a profile on LinkedIn. So I'm going to explain what I mean by this. But LinkedIn, I have a friend of mine who's known as the LinkedIn Ninja. And I went through some training with her. I hired her. We actually did a trade because she wanted to get ready for her TEDx talk. And so, but she helped me on the LinkedIn side. And I got to see stuff on LinkedIn I didn't realize, like I didn't realize what I was missing by not leaning in. LinkedIn is still the old Wild West when it comes to organic traffic. And there's not much of that left anywhere. So I'll explain what I mean is I disappeared from LinkedIn. And when I say disappeared, I just mean I wasn't posting for about 3 months because I got really busy. And I came back in using her strategies that she teaches. And no joke, my average views. So you can see how many people viewed it. And these are like organic traffic because I didn't run any ads like Facebook would want me to or anything. My average post for the next week, and this after being gone for 3 months, my average post got seen by 2,000 people. So in 5 days, 10,000 people seen my work after being gone for 3 months from a platform. Show me another platform where that happens organically.
That's really interesting. Do you have a top tip there? I know you probably can only scratch the surface, but that's very intriguing.
So yeah, I guess I'll give a couple of really quick tips. One is you need to engage a little bit. Like you can't just expect you're going to be pushed out to the world and it's going to come back to you. You need to engage, but be creative about who you engage with. It sounds crazy to say this, but the way LinkedIn works is if I comment, let's say on Shay Rowbottom, who's got 700,000 followers, if I comment and tag her in and then she comments, then that serves that up to her audience. So what I'm getting at is comment and tag people in. That's one thing. So engage with them, actually comment and show you care. The other thing I would say, mix up your posts. So one day you might want to do just a post with an image. Next day you might want to do a 2-minute video. By the way, always under 2 minutes, your videos. So under 2-minute video. And so you want to mix that up. I also would put, for example, one of the person I work with, she puts up testimonials. And what she does, which is really cool, is she'll do a testimonial for the client and tag them in. And then the next time she'll get one from them and put it on and tag them in. So she actually does testimonials once a week. And what that does is it gets her credibility grown in front of people that have been following her. Another thing that I do, you have to have this to do it, but I have photos, let's say of me and Les Brown or Bob Proctor, those get really good engagement. And so even if I don't tag them in, it's just that because they're known, people go, oh, what's this? They see him, Bob Proctor scrolling down. So then they start connecting. So what I'm suggesting is if you're at events and you get a photo with somebody on your phone, find a way to comment on that. Like mine are interviews, so it's easier because I can say, Les Brown said this to me. What do you think? But then what I would say is if you don't have that, say, well, Gary Vee signed my book and I love his work and here's why. Find a way to comment on that. What I will also say is tag other people in. So in your comments, what do you think, Rebecca, Jim? Like I would tag it, not to the point where they get mad at you, but just tag them. Don't tag the same people, but mix it up. And if you tag, say 10 people in, again, when they comment, it's going to show it up on their network. And then the last one I would say is in the comments, not in the tag, because you may not know this yet if you're watching, but social media burns your post basically if you try to put a tag, like a link inside the post. So if you put a link for a YouTube video inside your LinkedIn post, then they don't want to serve that up because that'll take people away from LinkedIn. Facebook is notorious for that. Like if I put, hey, check out John's new TED Talk, 3 people in my network will see it because Facebook doesn't want to show them it because it'll take them away from Facebook. But what you can do to kind of beat that is put it in the comments. So what you can do is if you have a TEDx video you want people to see, say, here's the 3 things I cover in my TEDx talk, et cetera, link is in the comments, and then put the link in the comments. So those are maybe 5 short, quick LinkedIn tips.
Yeah, that's great. So I know we're running out of time now. Corey, you got a program that you're opening up. Do you want to talk about that and how people can kind of keep going with this with you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, so I'll start it out in a different direction than normal. I'll tell you it's a monthly member site, under $50 a month. So I'll start there because people usually, as you know, John, when we're doing webinars, we're doing events, we're doing launches, people are used to hearing that you're talking about something that costs thousands of dollars at the end. And so I'm really excited because this is the first time I can say under $50. So I have a lot of pride in that. And so what it is that I've been wanting to, for a long time now, probably 5 years, launch a member site. And about 2 years ago, I sat down with my high performance coach, and we mapped out in a big bristle board. About a year ago, I sat down with Anthony Trucks. I don't know if you know who Anthony is, but he's an American Ninja Warrior, and he speaks on Brendan Burchard's stages
That's
and stuff.
Right.
Anyway, so Anthony, he designs funnels too, which I did not know. And so I got him to design the back end. But what we put together, which is in relation to a lot of what we're talking about today, John, because what I'm trying to do, as I mentioned early on, is help people become influencers sooner. You know, if you're wanting to become an expert or an influencer, my work is around getting you to become an influencer today rather than tomorrow. And so I've been trying to figure out how I can do that and do it, like I say, at a price that's unheard of. And so what we did is we put together this member site where basically we're bringing the opportunities to you. You know, so you were asking about, and we were talking about, how do you get media? How do you get an article in a magazine and all that kind of stuff? Well, what we're doing is we're actually bringing you the opportunities. So people come to me 2-3 times a day. Hey, do you want to share the bill with Jack Canfield at this event? My answer now always, John, is yes. And how many spots do you have? Because I want to advertise this inside our member site. So basically, we're building a curated list of opportunities, and including TEDx talks that are looking for people for speaking, writing, media, interviews, all that kind of stuff. And it's a list that we're building. It's only one bonus of the member site, but it's a list we're building. We've put it out twice so far. We soft launched 6 weeks ago, and we're approaching 100 leads like that. So people could literally apply right away to speak at a summit. But what's wild is when people hear that, they probably think, well, is that, small opportunities? This is wild. But one of the opportunities inside there will get you on a syndicated show with 3.2 million listeners. Another one will get you on an Amazon Live show that's really popular right now. And the third one, it's not listed this way, but it's a guy that's looking for speakers for his a nonprofit group he works for, but he actually hires Microsoft speakers. So if you applied for the opportunities inside there, 3 of the 85, you could potentially be speaking for Microsoft in front of 3.2 million people and on an Amazon Live show. So these are real deal opportunities that come my way. And so that's one of the things we want to bring together is I don't want you to have to chase opportunities, because everybody's always saying, I'm too busy now. That's the most common thing. I'm too busy. I don't have time to do this and that. I have time for another member site. Great. I don't either. But let's get you in the one that's going to bring stuff to you to save your time, so you don't have to pitch a podcast. You don't have to go to a summit. Let us do it for you. So that's one thing. The second thing is we have the classic content. So it's almost like Netflix. And you go inside the back end of the site, and there's a category for podcasting, writing, speaking. There's basically 12 categories. And one of them, for instance, on writing, you can listen to Mark Victor Hansen, who co-created Chicken Soup, share the exact strategy he used to sell millions of copies. How many millions? His book's now, 600 million copies sold? His whole catalog. And then Kevin Harrington was on recently, and he talked about how he launched a book during a pandemic and why it actually worked better than pre-pandemic. So those are the kind of things you learn inside the vault. Then we have monthly trainings. So things like, Kindle, how to crush it on Kindle. We don't have somebody doing that, John. Maybe we should have you, but we don't have that yet. But we're going to have things like that. So we have LinkedIn coming up with Shay Rowbottom. We have Kelly Falardo coming up, just talking Amazon strategies. We have a media person. So every month we're revealing, basically providing training to help you up level. The first one is the one I'm doing, which is coming up in about a week. And that one is on how to launch a speaking business from scratch. Well, this is something I've never even offered before outside of my thousands of dollars investment involved programs. So that's the kind of stuff we have there. And then the final piece is we're doing weekly interviews. And this is the part I left for last because I love this, but we get to bring on some of the world's biggest influencers. And as a member, you get to sit there live with them and ask them your most pressing questions and learn their secrets in real time. So give you an example. In the next 4 weeks, we have JJ Virgin, actually today, literally today, in a couple hours. Next week, we have Les Brown. Week after that, Bob Proctor. Week after that, John Gray. So what would it cost you to get the insight of those three gentlemen and lady, in real time? And so that is a big part of it as well, because basically you get to ask your questions, when the interview is going to take place, and you get to sit there, and we're doing that year round. So here's what I'll say when people say to me, well, this sounds great, but I don't have to rush, right? Because it's ongoing. You're correct. However, what you lose is you don't get to sit in front of Bob Proctor live, because I'm never going to ask Bob to come on one more time again. If I have to ask him for something, John, it'll be something different. So you'll never see Bob again. You'll never see Les again. So the one benefit is the sooner you get in, you get to see those interviews live, which is great. Second thing is the price, which I'm going to reveal. I've already given you the hint to what it is, never goes up. So if you sign up now and you're a member in good standing, it always stays the same. Third, though, because I wanted June to be our launch month, I also put in place, you may remember this, but I did an entrepreneurship, speakerpreneurship masterclass a few years ago. We charged $450 for it. We filled it, and but I've never offered it again. And so I'm actually giving people access to that. It's pre-recorded now, but it has me sharing high-level stuff around speaking, Tom Ziegler sharing the secrets from his father, Zig, me talking about writing, and then James Redfield sharing how he sold 30 million copies of the Celestine Prophecy, and then Kelly Filardo talking Amazon bestseller. And so you get access to that whole 5-week thing, basically included in signing up. And technically, I don't like to put this out there, but technically you could sign up for 1 month and take that masterclass. And then if it wasn't for you, you could jump right back in. Technically, I hope you wouldn't do that, but you could. So that's the Influencer Vault, John. And what we decided to do is put it on for, depending on where you're based, I'll tell you Canadian and US. And John, you might be able to convert it for me, depending on Europe and stuff. But it's 44 Canadian, which works out to 35 roughly US per month. So $44 per month Canadian.
That's about £20, just over £20 in the UK, 25 euros, that kind of price.
Okay, so so just people that might not be as used to that side, or also you're just thinking, what would I pay in my currency? And yeah, so 44 Canadian or 444 for the year. Obviously, that's intentional, those numbers, like the 444 and 44. But yeah, we launched this about 6 weeks ago with a group of 100 people. Very intentional. We wanted to test it out. And literally just this week and last week, we're finally opening it up to the public. So that's the Influencer Vault. And at the end of the day, everybody that joined us, I mean, my whole goal is to give you stuff you can use starting tomorrow, whether you join me in the Influencer Vault or not. But I will tell you, the Influencer Vault has basically more of what I've shared today, and it's truly a way to up level and basically have somebody help you become that expert and influencer sooner, rather than you have to figure this stuff all out on your own. And trust me, I spent 20 years figuring this stuff out on my own. It's a lot less costly to figure it out at $44 a month than it is to spend the thousands of hours or thousands of time it took me to figure it out. So yeah, that's sort of it in a nutshell, John.
Okay. Yeah, no, some great stuff, and it's, as you say, it's brand new. It's literally just started, and I know you've got some staying power in this industry, and a lot of experience and a ton of connections. For those that came on late, Cora's done over 6,500 interviews and interviewed a lot of the biggest names in the business. So hence he's got the kind of connections like the Bob Proctors and the Les Browns and people like that, and the JJ Virgins that are coming on, who's coming on this afternoon. And where should people go? Do you have a link you can put into the chat? Or
yeah, I'm just grabbing it right now, actually, John. So great question. And I will say the one thing about, for those watching in the replay, if I put the replay on YouTube, I'll have the link below the YouTube video as well. So if you're watching the replay, I'll tell you it'll be there. Because sometimes with the comments on Zoom, it doesn't necessarily show. And I will talk for a second here too, because for those that are still with us that want to click on the link, if I end this, then the link disappears too. I had that yesterday. The other person ended the interview, but I put the link in and then it disappeared. And then we were starting to get messages saying, well, wait a minute, I didn't even have a chance to click that link. But what that link will do, just to let people know, it'll actually bring you to the main page for the Influencer Vault. And then basically what's really cool is you can, even if you're not sure yet, you can actually get a free copy of our top 10 insights guide that I've learned from it's insights I've learned from the world's top leaders. And you get a few free videos. And then, but as soon as you grab that, it redirects you to the page for the Influencer Vault, where it tells you a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so you can click on, I've just clicked on that page. So you can, if you click on that link, that'll open the page up separately from Zoom. So
yes,
I'll put my details in after we've finished.
Yeah,
cool.
Absolutely. So John, any other questions you have? I know we went a bit over, but I'm okay with that. But is there anything else, or you want me to leave any parting thing, or what's? And really, right now, I'm trying to give people extra time to
just keep going. I mean, I think we've covered. I'm looking at my list because you had a list of questions and I've had a list of questions, and I think we've covered a lot of ground. I'm surprised how much we covered. And just to kind of loop back, I think the idea that you shared about the dominoes and just picking the one that's going to, obviously picking what's right for you, picking where your audience is, but picking something that's going to kind of make everything else easier. And again, as a message, and I've experienced this, obviously, Corey, you teach this all the time to people. is as soon as you have one thing, then the next thing becomes easier. So having a book makes the podcast easier, or having, being on a podcast makes it easier to get an interview, and the book can lead to the article and that kind of stuff. The small article leads to the big article. So I guess, and again, to look back to getting started, and don't be afraid to start. It would be my message to people who are starting out. I've seen so many people struggle to get going because they were afraid to just pull the trigger. It's never going to be perfect. It's especially first time out of the gate, but it's a way of getting started. And I'll share a quick story if we got a few seconds. When I first published Crush It with Kindle, which was December 2012, and that was the first edition. It's been substantially updated. It's a completely new book since then. The book that I published then was a fraction of the book that exists today, and all that sort of stuff. So if I'd have waited it for it to be perfect, it would never have been published. But within 2, maybe 3 months, probably 2, I'm going to say 2 months because it was really quick. I got a call from Jeff Affleck, who was the marketing guy at the time for Marcy Shimoff, Janet Bray Atwood, and Chris Atwood, and I ended up speaking on their high ticket mastermind group like 2 months after I published that first version of the book. And thanks for the thumbs up, Ian. And this was a group of people. There were a dozen people in a room, and they'd all paid $7,500 to $9,000 to be there for the weekend, and they were all working on their books. And I'd seen Marcy speak live at a Brendan Burchard event. I knew she'd sold over 50 million books through. She was a multiple New York Times bestselling author, and she's asking me questions about Kindle publishing. And it happened because I pulled the trigger on that imperfect book. And that's a takeaway. I think it's really important for people. Each thing you do, it's just going to get better and better over time. Just pull the trigger, put stuff out there, good things will happen, and doors will open that you didn't even know were there. And I think that what you've just described, and I'm looking forward to checking it out myself once we're done here. But what you've described is a really good fast track way of doing that, so that you're not having to chase the stuff down. And again, so much of success, I think, is, yes, you've got to have good content, and you've got to have your heart in the right place, but also having the networking, the connections, and the knowing the right people and how to go about it is key. And I think that's what your vault, your influencer vault, is going to deliver from what you've described to me. So,
well, thank you, my friend, and that is the goal. And you gave me, I thought I'll do some parting words, and you gave me my parting words. You gave me a segue from what you just said, which you talked about. You do have to take that first step. And it reminded me of that quote, which I think has been attributed to Zig Ziglar. But as we know, with all these quotes, nobody knows for sure. I guess I should ask Tom Ziglar and ask him. He might know, because he might have been there when he created it. But the quote was something to the effect of, you don't have to be great to start, but you sure have to start to become great. And it all starts with a step. And the truth is that if you saw when I first started playing music, John, and everybody else too, I was tone deaf. I had a girlfriend said, "Stop playing, you're hurting my ears." And fast forward a bunch of years later, I had a CD that got nominated for Rock Recording of the Year. It certainly didn't start that way. And, I don't say that as a me Inc. thing, but I mean, it took a lot of years of playing music just to get to the point where I could release a CD, let alone it be nominated. And so it taught me the value of the fact that we need to take those first steps. But if you put in the time and the grind, things will happen. But I also believe that if we can find shortcuts along the way, it's always the way to go. And usually those shortcuts are, you learn from coaches. Usually the shortcuts cost thousands. So I'm super excited the fact that this is the first time, like I said, I've been able to offer a way to work with me that basically is less than, again, $50 a month, let alone 100 or 200 or 300. So yeah, I'm super excited about this. And of course, those listening now, if you have any questions, certainly send them to me directly, or John, if you're okay with it, if people need to have a question or want to reach out, they can reach out to you, but just know I'm just a message away, regardless of the situation. So thank you, everybody. I'm so stoked that everybody joined us today.
Yeah, well, thank you, Corey, again, for coming on, sharing a ton of really good stuff. I certainly found that useful. I got some great takeaways. I hope you have too, listening, and thanks for being here. And yeah, I'll look forward to the next time we do some collaboration, Corey, and very, very best of luck with the launch here.
Well, thank you, my friend, and to be continued. And thanks, everybody. And everybody, I hope you have a magical day. And it worked out well. I had somebody that moved our next thing to the top of the hour. So I'm excited that we got a lot more time today. So awesome stuff. Thanks, my friend.
Excellent.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Okay, see everybody
Cheers.
later.
Bye-bye.